Hello and welcome back to another show of From the Field. I'm your host Casey, and today we have an awesome topic where we're going to be covering off what it is like to go through the SaaS journey with SourceFuse, as that is represented by Samarpan here, which will introduce himself shortly. And also we have Vishwa, which is a returning guest to the show, but that was back when he used to work for us in the New Zealand business, and now he is representing us over in India. Vish, do you want to do a quick intro and then cover off? What are we roughly going to be covering in this session today?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone, and nice to see you, Casey. Really excited to be back in Twitch. Quick introduction. My name is Vishwanath. People call me Vishwa or Vish. I am a senior solution architect working in our enterprise GSI segment here in India. I'm based out of Bangalore. Um, yeah, really excited to be here. So today we are going to talk about SaaS journey, right? And especially how customers needs to think about some of the critical things when building either a SaaS product from the scratch, or you're modernizing your existing product and making it as a SaaS. So what are the key things that we need to consider, and how a SaaS control plane becomes super critical, and how it can help you address some of those requirements or challenges, right? So if you look at it, Casey, if I may start with some of my experience, right? I've worked with number of ISV customers as well as enterprises who build their SaaS products, and some of the key things that comes into my mind, apart from some of the best practices that we typically address building modern applications like DevOps, microservices, decoupled components, those are all still apply to SaaS, but there is much more on top of it, right? For example, when you're building a SaaS, you really need to think about you're handing over the control to your end customers, especially from the onboarding perspective. That means it should be a frictionless onboarding, it should be fully automated, and it should happen instantaneously. So that brings that user experience to your end customers, number one, right? Number two, I've also seen when, especially in the early stages of building the SaaS products or launching your SaaS products, one of the key focus is getting as many customers as you can, right? Having the customer logos in your portfolio, which is totally fine. But what I've seen, some of these SaaS providers get into the trap of saying yes to all the customizations and handling multiple versions of code. I've seen that typically those branches will go, so diversified, and ultimately get into operational overhead. Number one. Number two also could be, you will end up in a tech debt. It's hard to upgrade and stuff like that. For example, one of my customer, based on different scenarios, they had different storage services, right? They use EFS for something, FSX for something, and they created separate branches for their customers. Ultimately they ended up with 11 branches, and totally everything is, completely what you call running in isolation. So that's where a single version of a code is very critical, and that's where you basically, rather than customization, you concentrate on a configuration, and those configurations should be automatically applied part of your onboarding journey. That means all the features are there, but you have kind of a feature set or a toggle that you apply to these type of tenants, these set of features that you're going to enable or disable. So that's the second thing I've seen. It's very critical when we think about building SaaS. Number two is how you think about bringing flexibility, right? Maybe we will cover that. So in SaaS, generally, there is multiple deployment models, right? So you might have a single stack or single completely isolated stack running for certain tenants, but to get more realization of revenue, you might also want to have a pooled or basically shared stack where customers will share the compute or database or any layer of those services, but you have isolation in terms of logical separation, right? So there are multiple deployment stacks, and it's very critical. And a SaaS provider may start with, say, single or a siloed stack, but ultimately at some point of their journey they realize that we also need a pooled one. So it's a mix actually. I've seen most of the cases 1 year down the line you will have multiple stacks like that, and it's very critical how you onboard those customers and take that decision as part of your automated onboarding process. So what deployment stack that you choose, right? As well as doing the blue green testing. How are you going to apply, suppose you introduce a new feature set, right? How are you going to apply to a small set of tenants rather than entire tenant base, so that you can reduce that blast radius, as well as you do the A/B testing and stuff like that, right? So again, that is all should be baked into your automation, and what we call that as a control plane.
And also, one other thing that I know that a lot of SaaS providers like have to come to is that um, customers will move between tiers as well. Like especially when you have that
Absolutely
shared ecosystem, like you
correct.
have to balance those ecosystems as well. And then sometimes they will graduate into having a standalone tenancy as well. So you have to have those internal migration paths.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I think you somehow you read my mind, right? So when we say flexibility, one is deployment stack. Second is how you evolve your product into multiple tiers. That could be based on pricing point or pricing plans. You have advanced tier or premium tier, basic tier, or also freemium, right? Or the free tier. Your tiering could be also based on the SLA that you provide, right? Based on throughput or whatever the parameter, usage, number of users, licenses. You might have multiple tiers. Also, it's sometimes I've seen that it's also becomes handy to avoid that noisy neighbor problem, right? You might have a heavy demand, heavy usage customers or tenants that you want to pack it in its own stack, whereas others can be pooled or shared. So there are multiple parameters by which you choose your product tiers, and again, your onboarding or a control plane should be flexible enough to onboard different product tiers as you evolve in your product journey, right? So that is number two. Number three, very important, right? It's all about cost. So billing and metering becomes super critical. How you aggregate all your tenant usage, consumption, cost data in a single pane of glass that you have full visibility is very important. And that's where without going into too much detail, a tenant ID or a tenant context, you need to inject into all the factors of your application, right? It's not only about you use your tenant ID or a SaaS identity for your authentication or authorization, but also inject that into your logs. I'll give you an example, right? You mentioned that isolated stack. It's very easy to get this cost in AWS, that you just have to tag your resources, and your cost explorer would tell you what is the cost. But what if some of the resources are shared? For example, EKS, where you pack multiple tenants, logically separate them namespace wise. Now getting the cost per tenant becomes very critical. That's where your tenant identity that you inject into the logs becomes handy, right? You can look at your single entry point like API gateway or a load balancer, and you can get that, you can aggregate or de-aggregate the logs, and based on the tenant, let's say I have two tenants, and my overall cost in EKS cluster is $10, and let's say tenant A is 75% of the invocation that he is doing on the API gateway, tenant B is doing, let's say, 25%, then I can easily map that to my cost profile and say that out of $10, 7.5 is consumed by tenant A, and $2.5 is coming from tenant T. So it becomes very critical how you design our architecture, so that we have that full visibility on billing as well as metering. When I say metering, again, you have to, based on your subscription, based on your SLAs, you need to throttle, rate limit certain things. Again, how you do that without having the visibility of the tenant, right? Again, that is super critical. Now, last but not the least is security. Security always job zero, right? And as you rightly said, how do we isolate the tenant? It could be based on multiple factors. A customer is, enterprise customer. They have their own compliance, regulatory requirement, and they want to have their own completely separate stack for their, usage, as well as it could be based on how you, partition their data as well. So these are all the some of the things, and if I go on it, entire hour I'll spend on these, some of the considerations, right? That's where I say it's one stack up. If you look from top down approach, on top of your modern application development best practices, SaaS has its own, consideration that you need to be aware of. And to solve most of this, you need to have a very good strategy and a good thought through SaaS Control Plane. That will do a lot of these things easier for you, right? Now, with that, I mean, I want to introduce Samarpan, who is a principal architect at SourceFuse. SourceFuse is our premier AWS partner, and they have been helping number of customers in the SaaS journey, right? And with their experience, they built an open source project that will help customers to quickly get started with the control plane with all these best practices. And it's open source, right? Anyone can go now and download and start getting started with that. So with that, I want to, without wasting the time, I know that Samarpan has a lot of content to cover, including a exciting demo. So I wanted to hand over to Samarpan to take us through the project that they have built, as well as why they have built and their experiences, right? And along the way, we'll have a discussion. Casey, does that sound good?
Sounds awesome.
Cool. Over to you, Samarpan.
Thanks, Vishwa. Thanks, Casey. Thanks for inviting me here, and I'm glad to be here. And like Vishwa mentioned, there's a lot in this SaaS space to talk about, and definitely the key challenges are already being shared by Vishwa. Let me try to share my screen. I hope you guys can see the screen.
Yep, it's up. You just need to go into presentation mode.
Yes. So let me first introduce a little bit about what SourceFuse do, what we do, what we have been doing. So, we have been in the business for more than 18 years now. We have global locations. We are in India, US, UK, Japan, Australia. We've got teams in all these locations working. Over 600 global employees. The space that we have been working for so many years has been modernization, application development, large migrations, cloud managed services, and all those stuff, right? So then tons of modernization and moving people onto AWS, upgrading them to the cloud, and all those stuff. Uh, Quickly, Vishwa mentioned, we are a premier partner. We are also a SaaS competency partner, and these are all other partnership and competencies that we have achieved so far. We are all in on AWS, as you can see, right? We have been working with all our customers and mostly on AWS. So our mission, right? SourceFuse, our mission has always been to build enterprise applications, and always, if the product requires a certification, ensure that it is following all the standard practices. Right? We want to empower our customers with focus focus on their core business, and let us handle the basics of SaaS or basics of application development side of things, right? So that the core business logic, the core product mindset stays with the customer, and the store things are handled by us. Kind of, you know, giving them that liberty that they spend their efforts and time on their side, and let us handle other stuff completely. And again, reduce the time to market, right? Uh, Having said that, how we have been achieving this mission for so long. Let me little bit talk about Arc first, and then I'll come back to the pointers that Vishwa just mentioned. So around 5 years back, I guess, we started off Arc. So how did we started off Arc? Let me give some history, right? Uh, we have been in this business developing applications for so long. What we started observing was we have been repeating ourselves. And being a developer myself, one of the key principles, in software development is drive. Do not repeat yourself. But it seemed like every new product, we have to do a few basic constructs like authentication, authorization, real-time notifications, email notification, SMS notifications. And at that time, it was a COVID era. A lot of video conferencing and online chat mechanism, customer support. All of these were pretty common in every application we were developing or modernizing. And having these, uh, we what we used to do. Okay, fine. A new team comes in, they just copies the code from a previous code base or some basic code base, because the constructs of authentication authorization are common. Either it is OIDC, OpenID, Connect, or it is OAuth 2.0, or the single sign-on, social login. Authorization has the same construct, role-based access control, attribute-based access control. So constructs are same. The basis is same. But we used to again, copy it to the new code base, build upon it based upon the business logic of the new product. That's when we realized, why not have a accelerator framework? Why not have a catalog of services available which can be reused? Because all of these can be reused. We had these libraries forever, but we never had a ready-made microservice also. And at that time, of course, it was all about microservices as well. And having microservices is actually beneficial, because then you can actually plug and play. Whatever you need, pick it up, use. And that's how Arc was born. So we started off with Arc backend, our API side, where we created a catalog of reusable, pre-built microservices, open source, right? And they are nothing but node packages, just install and you are up and ready, right? With all the basic constructs available. Again, you configure what you need. You basically enable what you need and keep with other things to civil. If, let's say, in our authentication, we support all the social login like Gmail, Insta, Facebook, Keycloak, Cognito. But if you only need Cognito, you just enable that. You keep the rest of the things hidden, stopped, not working. Similarly, we have authorization framework. I'll show you a list later on if required. But yeah, so authorization, if you want only RBAC, go ahead with RBAC. If you want ABAC, go ahead with it. So that's how we created a catalog of services, which now is, I think, approximately we have 12 to 13 microservices. All of them are reusable. All of them are plug and play and open source. Next up was to having a ISC around it. So when you have microservices, you might also need to roll out using ISC, right? So we started off writing Terraform modules for all of the basic standard practices. And of course, what we started off was following all the AWS well-architected framework, guidelines, creating those baselines, account baseline, LZA baselines, control tower, serverless, and EKS baseline, ECS baseline. These are basic of infrastructure, right? So why not have boilerplates, Terraform scripts ready for them, so that any new project, you just use the baseline, add your own environment variables, and on the API side, add your own business logic if you need, and then just plug and play. And you are up and running with the basic stuff in no time, right? Then we started off also on the UI front, creating a front-end boilerplates in Angular, React. Again, the next spectrum, right? These are three spectrum of development that we use nowadays, right? So the UI side. So once we had the UI, now this spectrum is complete, right? Right from the UI accelerator, then you have an API accelerator, then you have an IS accelerator. Having this enabled us to reduce the initial, push. Gave the customers initial push. We reduced the overall time to market as well, right? So we were able to deliver, things, other products, almost 30 to 40% faster, because we had this accelerator. Again, all of this is open source, right? So it can be changed, it can be overridden, it can be forked, you can play it around. So this is how Arc was born. The history behind it and the thought process behind it, because you need such kind of accelerators in the market. Like I said, why we had built Arc, we wanted faster time to market, we wanted focus on innovation and focus on the product side of things, battle tested code. Again, all of this that we have been doing, it has been used in multiple applications over a period of time. I think almost 30 to 40 production grade applications we have done so far, using some of it or all of it. Like I said, you don't need to use ISE on, you don't need to use API as well as ISE together. If you only need the baseline, go ahead, only use the ISE side of things. So we have projects which are only using the baseline ISE scripts and adding their application stack, their own application stack on top of it. Then we have applications which is built completely on the API stack, Arc API stack, and ISE is completely separate for various reasons, right? Similarly, somebody is only using UI, and there are applications which are using a combination of all. So teams can go from 0 to 100 by selecting core services, and all of this is adaptive in nature. Like I said, you can just plug what you need. For example, we have a notification microservice, and I remember, yesterday only I was having a chat with one of my colleagues that in my notification microservice in R, we have SES, we have SNS, we have all these capabilities, all these providers. But for some project, he had a requirement for having to send an email using SendGrid. So I said, no worries, you just need to write one class file for SendGrid adapter. And that's all. You just need to do anything else. Just one class file. Your existing APIs will work. Even the way all of this is built is having a common interface, which means if you are providing your APIs as SaaS to other, for other integrations, other third-party service vendors, right? Then also they don't need to change anything. They just need to send a new type to it, and you are automatically using the new type. You just need to add one class on your end. The interface doesn't change. That's how we have been built, and that is the extensibility that we have enabled into this Arc. Like I said, this is downloaded over 2.2 million times. I think it is more now. This number is little old. Yeah, but you can go ahead and check out. I'll share the links also. Now let's talk about SaaS. So after we built this Arc, we start, have, and after delivering so many projects, we started up noticing a pattern where we definitely have all these microservices. All these microservices have multi-tenancy. What we don't have, and we started noticing, is we don't have a control plane, a reusable control plane. We used to build a control plane for some of the applications, but completely on our own. And again, what we also noticed was, like, Vishwa mentioned, that when the customer starts off in this SaaS journey, the thought process is to build the application with multi-tenancy in mind, having those tenant contexts, but what they forget, and even, with our past experiences, we also have observed that, sometimes we also kind of get so much indulged into products, application side, that we also forget that there needs to be a control plane. So how would they onboard a new tenant? How usually people do is they say, oh, okay, how to onboard a new tenant? That's okay. We'll run it manually. We'll let you know. You set up that tenant in the database via some APIs, or even sometimes not even without APIs, right? So that's crazy, right? Why not, talk about frictionless onboarding, like Vishwa said? Why not have that? Why not have that as a standard feature? Again, like an accelerator, you build on top of it. And that's where we thought, okay, why people don't do it? Again, because they don't want to invest in this. They want to focus on the product side. We say, yes, that's very true. When you build a product, you need to focus on the product, right? But as a customer, they don't want to spend time, effort, money in having this layer, especially when they are starting up, right? An established application, they might have money. Yes.
Samarpan, we do have a question about, if someone is just starting out and they're wanting to figure out what is the best way to start, simple like control plane build, what would be the best way to go about that?
Yes, so exactly. That's a very good question, Casey. And that question arises a lot of times because a lot of our customers are just starting. So if you ask me, obviously the best way is, first of all, focus on the application, right? You have to build an application. But the problem is, while building the application, you should not forget about your control plane layer. And That's where what we have built as an accelerator to your SaaS control plane will help. So focusing on the application plane, the product need to focus on the application plane, as well as also need to think how they want their customer onboarding journey from a product side. Let's say uh, they definitely need to think that when they get new customer, what kind of flexibility they want to provide. Let's say because I have kind of worked with an SaaS product which was in a digital signing domain. So I've got some examples from there. What there are various ways in which you can license a customer when you are delivering a digital signing SaaS product. Like for example, one way would be I want to license my customers based upon number of signings. Another way would be I want to license my customer based upon number of documents they sign. One document can have multiple sign-ons, right? Then uh, another case would be I want to license my customer based on the number of users they got. There are
Yeah.
various factors, and all these are product decisions. But the problem is,
Samarpan, if I
yes, for sure,
if I may come in, so absolutely what you're covering is perfect. But also, if you are just starting, right, and you want to
yes,
start real simple, so my advice would be create a business mapping for your control plane. For example, what are the real critical components that you want to see from as a SaaS provider? Right, you want to
yeah,
see all the bills and the consumption. Number one, you want to have functionality where your customers wants to manage their users or onboard their end users. Suppose you are selling your SaaS product to enterprises like B2B, right? Things
yes,
like that. You need to have a good metrics logging and stuff like that. So map those critical components first and see, in order to get that into a central control plane, what are the things you need to expose from application, either through API, either through data ingestion, like logs and all those things, and design your strategy around that. So I would say, don't get into the weeds of, see, it's continuous evolving journey. When you're building control plane, you will not get perfect control plane on day one, right? So
absolutely.
I mean, I did this exercise with a lot of customers, that we identified what are the very critical things that we need
Hmm.
for us to launch our SaaS product or down the line, and then start evolving that, right? So I would go from there.
Absolutely.
And if the question is related to how to use the arc, then that question we will cover as we go along. How you can use
Absolutely.
arc as a base.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. So thought process is that only, right? You chalk out your business functions and chalk out what could be your product decisions, and but definitely start thinking about how you want to onboard your tenants. What are the different kind of licensing plans? What are the different business functions you want as part of it initially?
Yep.
You may not require to build everything from day one. Of course, you want to focus on the product first, but you have to have that capability always, right? So yeah, that's true. Yeah, moving on. So in our access, that's what we try to do. And let me add one important stuff here is this: whatever we have built in access is have been discussed, vetted, and kind of approved by SaaS Factory, AWS SaaS Factory team. We have been working with them in collaboration and kind of getting whatever we have been trying to build, kind of get it vetted by them and ensure that we are following all the SaaS Builder Toolkit guidelines and principles. Right, we have to follow those, which are set up by SaaS Factory team, and SaaS Factory team has been very kind with us in reviewing all of this stuff and helping us build this. So this is all of this is AWS SaaS Builder Toolkit compliant. Like I said, is microservices, open source. But as we talked about agile. Will sure, and agile here means basically you can change whatever functionality you want to. You have to have that agility to enable disable features, or even uh, you know uh, when you do some changes to your product side of things, you should be able to change that easily, right? Operational efficiency, this is very core. how to manage the cost, how to manage all of those, and observability, right? How the logs and ensuring security in terms of tenant wise observability is super important, and these are the basic tenets that we follow in ArcSaaS. So here is the whole landscape, right? On the right hand side, you see the application plane. Let us focus more on the left hand side, the control plane. If you see on the control plane, what basics that you require: identity. We talked about identity. Vishwa talked about identity and authorization. And identity and authorization on the control plane does not mean login into a control plane. Identity authorization means when you are onboarding a tenant, you need to set up those tenants and their users into the identity provider. We are using Cognito. Here we are using Cognito. In our first version of ArcSaaS, we are using Cognito. So what we do is we create user pools per tenant. Each tenant has its own user pool. But all of this is automated, right? Through the tenant onboarding and provisioning journey, right? Tenant management, you have to manage your tenant, check the statuses, and whether they are provisioned, active, inactive, activate them or inactivate them sometimes manually, right? Tiers and plans. I'll showcase this more in a slide because this is a key aspect which we should also touched upon as one of the problem statements, right? So I'll focus there. Billing payments, managing the billing and payments of the tenants and ensuring the based upon subscriptions, how much they are paying and all. Very important, right? Feature flagging, again, a very important and core aspect. We already had feature flagging enabled on the application plane side in our ARC. We moved it one step ahead and integrated it into the control plane as well, so that you can now enable disable feature as part of the plan. Again, I'll showcase it on one of my slides. Notifications, audit, all of these are ancillary. Analytics, tenant aware observability, and metering also is part of the analytics and observability. We'll showcase that as well. And as you can see at the bottom, you have all the AWS services. Right now, we are all in on AWS. Right now, the first version of ArcSaaS is having the flavor of EKS. So it's Kubernetes right now. We are working on an ECS flavor also, and also later on, by the end of the year, we might have a service flavor as well. But right now, it's all EKS. Since you see EKS there, you see database. We support RDS, Aurora, or any other SQL databases. We use Dynamo DB for maintaining our states for Terraform. We use Elasticache, and like I said, we use Cognito. In between, if you see, there are some important tools which we use for provisioning and management, and for our GitOps, which which we use as part of the control plane. Again, you can pick and choose. You don't need to use everything that we are using here. We give the capability, we give the feasibility, we give the flexibility to you. Now it's up to you what you need, right? We use Carpenter because I'll show you where we use Carpenter actually in one of the slides. The major aspect of Carpenter, using Carpenter, is ensuring if we are creating a silo compute on EKS, Carpenter helps us in providing separate EC2 compute to those silo customers on EKS.
Samarpan, I am aware of the time, and the demo is going to take 15 or 20 minutes.
Yes.
Do we want to make sure we get to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go back to the challenges that Vishwa mentioned, right? The first one, time to value for new tenants, the onboarding, right? Let me show you how the we do the onboarding. So I'll have to let me just open this one. Let me log out from here. So if you see, again, this is a boilerplate UI. Of course, this entire UI you can customize, right? So there are two ways by which we can sign up the tenant. One is self-registration, which you're seeing right now, the self-service, right? They can enter their name, they can enter their details, like provide the company name, organization name, provide an email. This email is very important because whatever email somebody types in, right? Let's say, let me see, In the interest of time, I'll not fill all these and I'll not go through the entire step. But yeah, I'll just show you.
Yeah, maybe
Uh,
you can cover off very high level, but one key thing is typically in SaaS world, there are multiple ways where customers come on to your SaaS, right? One is through
Correct.
offline channels where uh,
Absolutely.
your products may have a sales teams who are working on the field. Second is you might have SaaS products registration process like what he is showing. So it's actually
Absolutely.
important to also lead generation and having them into your CRM as
Absolutely.
the potential customers, right? So it becomes very critical how you think about, I mean, again, this should be related to your business strategy or the product strategy, but that's where the frictionless onboarding comes in very handy. Like you can register it, you can also give a free tier, for example, how we gave free tier on AWS, for an example. So have that in mind when you're creating your onboarding process. What are the different business strategy that you want to address and how you want to get those leads into your backend system, ERP or CRM?
Absolutely. So yeah, I'll show you the entire process as well in one of the slide. I have the flow that we use, and you are absolutely right. So there are two ways. We also support both the ways. Where one is self-service like this, and another one is where somebody connects to your product support team, backend team, and they sets up the customers, right? So as you can see, the details are very basic. But one key factor is this email ID. This is super important because this email ID by default will become the first administrator user of this tenant admin. We call it tenant admin. By default, this will become the tenant admin, and this will have all the privileges within that tenant. Within that tenant, it can do everything, right? There needs to be for first user. That's the flow look like, right? Now, once somebody signs up, I'm not going to do the whole process, but the first step is that we basically validate their emails. Let me go back, and I have a flow diagram for this one. So this is what's going to happen. Hold on, sorry. So this is what's going to happen. So like I said, I showed you the self-service portal. There is another way using which you can do, like the product support, like Vishwa mentioned, backend team connects, right? So customer signs up, a new lead is created. In our database also, a new lead is created. I'll show you the leads also. But why lead? Why not a tenant yet? Because we don't know whether it's a garbage data or just a actual tenant, right? So we have to validate. We have to validate the credentials. Again, we might go ahead and provide them a free tier. A product may decide to do that, right? So how does a lead gets converted into tenant? That's the next step. Where once the email is validated, tenant comes up. Either if it is self-service, again they can choose their own plan and they do a payment and the lead is converted to a payment. Or again, if it is a backend team, can do the same thing. The flow is same because service is just an reusable service. They can just integrate that, right? So let me log in now and I'll show you. So you see, I've got a list of leads. So let's say these are the leads which came in, but they didn't completed their registration process and choose a plan, right? So initially you can see all the list of leads. Also, you can have an integration with your own CRM here as well if you need, right? Uh, right now it is maintained in the ArcSaaS database, but it can be synced up with any CRM tool as well. This is a list of onboarded tenants, and if you see, we just minimize. If you see, this is a status, right? When uh, when the onboarding starts, initially they are not active, right? What happens is initially, if you see on this slide, once a tenant is created, it starts the provisioning process. At that point of time, the status is under provisioning, and once the provisioning is complete, which is this process, I will showcase the code build also here. But just to highlight, when we start doing this is the automated process of provisioning. Again, like we said, frictionless onboarding, right? How to ensure that this tenant onboarding is completely automated process and happens in no time. So this is triggered as soon as the tenant is created and they choose a plan and do a payment. This entire flow is triggered. And if you see, it is event driven, it is using event bridge, and it is triggering a Lambda, which is an orchestrator Lambda. And what happens is this Lambda basically takes in some parameters. If you see, there goes the tenant ID. We're talking about it in context, right? Right from the word go, once the tenant is created and the provisioning starts, the tenant ID is injected into the event bridge, and through that it reaches to the orchestrator Lambda as well. That's the key. It has to be passed on, and it then enters into the code build. Let me show you the code build as well. So again, now there are two aspects, right? Uh, we we might have some tenants who want completely silo compute and silo storage. Then there would be case where you might need pooled compute and pooled storage. So, oops, let me just
So
reload.
one question from here. So we're talking about onboarding. And for a
Yes,
SaaS business, because generally you won't just have the sign up phase, you'll have a number of setup steps that are
yes.
intermediate of that. Does Arc automatically put together like a conversion statistics page where you can identify where the friction points are, or like the funnel drop off? Because like
So,
signing up is one thing, but if they
yes,
drop off on like the third step, for example, then that means that as a business you should
yes.
probably start looking at that third step. So is that type of statistics available?
So, these are the steps which can be added right now. Off the shelf, they are not, because this is depend upon what application you are building. They will have their own configuration. For example, let's say the application has third-party integrations with a CRM tool like HubSpot or a Salesforce, right? It might have a third-party integration with some other application. So while onboarding a tenant, it will have to set up those third, third-party integration as well. So yes, there is a capability in the access where you can inject that as part of. If I okay, let me show you here. In this part of orchestrator Lambda, this is where you can put in your own business logic, and we are also building another in our phase two of access. We are also building a completely decoupling environment where you can add a step function or a business flow using which the after this during the provisioning step you can define your own steps, and that's where you can do all of that. And from the UI side of things, that has to be built again, so because this is totally custom. But yeah, from the back end purposes, if you ask me, out of the shelf of the box, no. But we are working on a decoupling environment where you will have this available as part of your business flow using step functions and any BPM flow.
Yep, cool.
Okay, so I was just trying to showcase few things here. So this is the code build which runs, which is getting triggered. This is one of the tenant I pre-provisioned. If you see, there's a lot going on, so I'll just focus on the key aspects. The most important thing is whatever keys and everything that you are seeing here are fetched from parameter store. So everything is secure, and you see tenant ID, right? This is the key factor. Everywhere you will see tenant ID being pushed and being used, right? And this, so as part of pre-build steps, it basically creates downloads the Docker images and rebuilds them using the environment variables for the tenant. Again, this is driven by control plane. So control plane provides the values like I showed you, right, to the code build and code build via the event bridge, right? And all those values are picked up. So why this way, right? Because you every product will have its own application environment variables. You have to define them sometimes. That's why this capability is added, that we can put in an event. That event contains objects where you can define whatever you need, right? You see the tenant ID, you see various tenant name, the email, the first user, right? That you want to do. And here, as part of it, like I showed you, it will also create the this is now creating all the infrastructure for it. This is a silo by the way. And finally, it will basically complete the provisioning. So I'll
Yeah,
just not go through this entire thing. Moving ahead in the interest of time, And similarly, you have another code build which is triggered when a pooled compute is required. So again, this decision is managed by orchestrator Lambda, which code build to trigger, and it
Yeah. So
maintains its states in the dynamic. Yeah,
yeah, so to summarize, maybe not going too deep into the code build and the
absolutely.
underneath, but what you're trying to say here, if you look at frictionless onboarding, you have fully automated end-to-end flow, and there is orchestrator which will make sure that tenant identity is baked into the life cycle throughout the onboarding as well as thereafter, right? So that's a core thing.
Absolutely.
What I wanted to
Abs-
see in the demo, conscious of the time, that some of the features and also product tiers is Arc supports that handling multiple product tiers or onboarding new product tier or the plans
yes,
as and when we go.
absolutely. So I
Yeah.
was just going to the next that step only now.
Okay.
So I should, I yeah, can you guys see my slide?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So, like I said, I showed you two code builds, right? We have three, by the way. We have three kind of tiers. So, in this, on the left hand side, you see we support three tiers right now: pooled compute, pooled storage, pooled compute, silo storage, silo compute, silo storage, right? We call them basic, standard, premium. That's a standard. That's a kind of practice that's that's used in SaaS factory side also. So we kind of utilize that. Now I showed you a flow where have you can select your plan. The customers can select your plan. But in our access, you can define and configure your plans. Being the product admin, you can define, and you can define those based upon three factors. One, you choose a tier. It is basic, standard, premium. The tiers means, like I said, compute and storage, pool, silent. Second, you choose the size. So you might have a customer who wants a premium tier, but their size of data and infrastructure is medium, their load is less. So you can define that size. Uh, Again, these are just terminologies. The values of this is configurable. You can define what medium means, what small means, what large means, or you can have a number of configurations in terms of size. I just showed you this as an example. Third factor is feature toggling. You can define which features you want to enable as part of a plan. So here I've showed you 10 different plans with different combinations, right? With a tier, with a particular size, and with features. You can define some features, you can enable all the features also. So this is how you can define your plans. And now this plan details again is sent into the event bridge, and through that is received by the code build. And code build has that configuration defined, and that code build is obviously customizable. You can define your own steps as part of it. And also, if once we do the step function integration, you can define what all resources needs to be provisioned if only a few features are to be enabled. For example, there is an application where we have doctor-patient chat and video conferencing, and we have a feature called a session recordings, right? We have a microservice for that, let's say. But if there is a customer who don't want recording because that costs them, so we can actually disable that feature. And as part of that, we will not even roll out or enable that particular microservice for that thing. And again, that is managed by that code build pipeline, like I showed you. So you cannot do all of this.
Yeah,
And there are logical
this is
features.
actually very great, right? I mean, this is exactly what I mentioned initially, Casey and Samarpan.
Yes.
By having the feature flags and then the product
Yes.
tiers or plans, so you actually not only maintaining a single code base, but imagine that in my product I'm releasing a new feature, right? And I don't know how it will be received by my end user. So I can target my blue green deployment and say that, hey, 5% of my traffic would have that feature flag enabled, and I'm doing that through a configuration file, not by changing the business logic or not by creating any another silo stack or deployment, right? So it's all fully automated. So my recommendation is look at feature flags or feature sets, because they will come in really handy, especially when you scale, make
Absolutely.
operational overhead real simple. So yeah, consider them. So that is thanks for sharing that. Can you show on the demo maybe quickly where it is available on the arc?
So right now it's on not on the UI, because that's just a
Uh-huh.
sample UI that we have created. There are APIs. There's this microservice in our, which I will sharing a link later on as a reference doc. There we have a microservice where it is all managed. So I'll share you at the end for that.
Okay. All good. Maybe last 2 minutes, let's go through your GitHub repository for people to,
Absolutely.
download. Okay, perfect. No, that is great.
Okay. So you were talking about blue green deployments, managing all those stuff, right? So here we are. This is an Argo CD dashboard where you see we discussed that one of the problems of our SaaS journey is monitoring tenant health, monitoring their
Hmm.
services, and obviously managing them as well.
Yeah.
That's where Argo CD helps. So in our Argo CD also, like I said, when we do a silo compute, we create a separate namespace, as well as we using Carpenter, we basically enable a separate EC2 for that silo customer, right? Using that and these are namespaces. So forget about the first one, that's a control plane deployment. But the pooled SBT is a pooled compute, and SourceFuse is one of the silo tenants, right? So using this, you can actually monitor the health of the services for each tenant. If you have more tenants, you will see more blocks here. So if you go inside, let's say this is one of the silo customer, you will see all the services and the health of it. And again, you can enable disable a particular service from here as well if you want, right? And this is tied up and connected, integrated with the pipeline also, using which again we allow enabling disabling of features. If you, let's say, we don't want notifications as part of a plan to a customer, this service will be stopped automatically from there. Also, you can do it from here. Again, you can manage upgrades. You just click here, sync again, you will have the upgraded environment. You can do canary releases, beta releases to a particular customer, so that check whether the services are going good or not. In the interest of time, I'll go to our next problem. So I covered tenant health, I covered time to value for new tenants onboarding, frictionless onboarding. I also covered the identity management, how we do the user pool thing. Let's talk about tenant-wise cost and usage metrics. I think that's a key aspect that everybody wants to look at. So let me just go to a dashboard. So, okay, this is a pre-baked dashboard, but what I want to showcase is that this capability is inbuilt in Arc SaaS. So what we have is, like I showed you, we pass down the tenant context everywhere, right? From the place, starting from onboarding journey, just pass under the code build. Code build creates namespaces using the same context inside the EKS, right? And because we have namespaces, we can again actually find out the cost attached to it, right? In case of silo customers, definitely, because we have the silo compute. So this is this is a Grafana dashboard that we have built on top of it's using, I think, Athena query language to fetch the cost from AWS. Here you can see I have all the tenants that I have, right? Some of them are pooled, some of them are siloed. So I've chosen one silo tenant, which is already, I just showed you have data. Here you can see their cost, right? How much their RDS is costing. This is the AWS cost, AWS resource cost, right? And whatever, let's say they have a queue, they have a S3 bucket, they have other stuff. You can find out all the costs because we tag everything using the tenant context that is passed on, right, through the code build. And this is how you can figure out all the usage, the cost associated to it within that. Then also we also have queue cost, where you can figure out cost based upon individual namespaces within the Kubernetes cluster, right? So let's say this is one of the clusters, and you see all these namespaces. You can go ahead and check. These namespaces are nothing but your tenants there, right? So
So
they
this
must be
is where
specific.
you're
Yeah,
this is where
okay,
you're showing the shared cost because EKS cluster is shared.
absolutely
Okay.
correct, correct. So yeah, so this is where we can also, within the EKS cluster, individual cost can be also be catered to using cube cost. And this one is the AWS cost, because these are two different things. Of course, we are in process. Sorry, not this one. This one. We are in process of all of these dashboards can be embedded into the same UI as well. So that can also be done. That's no big deal. But we wanted to keep everything plug and play. You might need one, you might not need other one. So we don't want to plug everything together and say, take everything. No, no need. Pick whatever. Right?
You could have a feature flag.
Similarly,
Yeah.
a feature flag. Absolutely. So yeah, correct. Okay. There's one more that we use is CloudWatch Synthetics again to monitor tenant services health. We use Canary here and we use CloudWatch Synthetics. And again, these are your tenants' canaries where we can figure out how much was the uptime. We also manage the time taken by individual code builds while onboarding a tenant, while upgrading a tenant, updating a new release to them. How much
Yep.
was the failure? How much was the success? This is also very important aspect sometimes required by the
Yeah, some pen. I
uh,
think it'd be good from here to for us to actually do like a quick 2 minute summarization of everything that we covered off today.
absolutely.
Um, so Vish, I think that you'd because you kicked us off. If you can do that summarization, and then we can.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. And maybe last 2 minutes, it's very important that we show how to use Arc if somebody wants to, use it from your open source. Let's use that. So, as I said, there are a number of challenges that we need to consider while building SaaS control plane, and control plane is very important, right? And why we are showing Arc is it's open source. This is not again selling or nothing like that, right? It's open
All
source,
of this is
but
open source.
but
Yeah,
yeah, but I've seen that a lot of customers, it'll give a boilerplate template to the point from where you can start, right? You can customize anything on top of it, but it'll give you solid foundation to think about how various things in the SaaS world can be put together and built quickly. So thanks, Samarpan. If you can quickly walk us through, if I want to start with Arc SaaS, how do I download this? How do I deploy this? And how do I get started?
sure. So this is an ArcDocs page, and you have all the links and documentation that I shared just now here as well. And we do have a page on our SourceFuse on how to set up Arc, and we also have more blogs here. And the GitHub repo is let me go
I've
from
already
here
shared
itself.
the URL for the GitHub repo.
Yes, so that's the repo URL. Okay, this is the ArcDocs link. Wait,
So I've already shared that.
yeah, I'm opening up here.
Cool.
Just a second. So this is our repo where you can see this various services. Again, these are npm packages. You just need to install them, right? If you go on npm, you will find out. I have the reference links here as well. These are the services that you have, and this is the control plane GitHub URL that I just opened up. On npm, you simply do npm install, and whatever services you need, you can install. As part of this, currently we have three services, like I said. One is subscription service where you define all those plans and management. And if you go on this, there must be there's a documentation of what all environment variables you need to define. What is the database schema? Here you can see how we define those plans and all. And you can simply do an npm install and your service is up and running, right? We have an orchestrator service which I showed you. We have a tenant management service. All of these are npm packages. Regarding the EKS Terraform, we have a separate repo. This one, which has all the details around how to set up the EKS blueprint that we have. How to set up, all the details are here. Feel free to go ahead. All of this is open source, available to you. This deck also contains all these links if somebody wants to take a look at. And I think, do you want me to put it on the chat window as well, Casey?
Yeah, I'm putting it on there now for the EKS one just because I've already done the
Yeah.
others. We are at time, so I do want to again thank you, Sampan, for coming on and sharing your knowledge around ARC, and also Vish for organizing this. It is a really awesome solution, so I do believe that everyone should actually take a little bit of time out of their day to, like, just have a quick look at that documentation. It is a very interesting starting point, and it like based off my experience and when I was doing SaaS, this would definitely have been a lifesaver and would have saved a lot of pain that I actually had to engineer around after the fact.
Absolutely, and yeah, give it a try, uh, and see the boilerplate template what it gives, and build on top of it. That's my request. Yeah, thanks, Casey. Really appreciate the opportunity to come on to the Twitch again. Yeah, so many more sessions like this. Looking forward to it, and thanks, Samarpan. Really awesome, showcase, and definitely. People would try out Arc and see how it can benefit their journey, SaaS journey. Anything
Thank
you want to
you.
add, Samarpan?
No, I think, yeah, I mean, I can keep on talking about SaaS and ARCs especially. So sorry, because if I couldn't do the justice to the time, but yeah, I kind of tried to cover whatever I could. And this is a very long journey. We feel we are still at a 30%, 40% stage of what a complete SaaS control plane looks like. We are also learning as we go, as we deliver to our customers, right? So it's a long journey. We can keep on talking. There are tons of things to do in this, and every day we find a new challenge in terms of control plane. And our goal is again build a reusable solution, which is as standard as possible, following all the guidelines, and give that accelerated to the customers. And
Yep.
open source,
Ab-
And
we love open source.
and that is awesome. And with that, I do have to say to all of our guests, thank you again for joining us, and Matuia, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye bye.